Evening, everyone. So, yes, we've issued, actually, not just we, the UK, Canada, various countries in Europe. We've issued travel warnings for people intending to travel to the United States. Now, there are always some sort of travel warnings. If you look on a government website, if you're planning to travel to any country, there's always a list of things because it opens up with travel is never guaranteed to be safe anywhere, even in your own country. But there's the usual things. It warns about potential for hurricanes and this, that, and the other, and terrorist attacks. But now there's a bit of a veiled warning about the United States authorities, because we've had some cases very recently of people being detained who were not trying to enter their country illegally. They had their visas, or their visa waivers, or whatever it is they needed to get into the country. They thought it was all sorted, and yet were still detained. In the case of one British person, they said, obviously we only got it from their side of things, they were detained for days, like nearly 2 weeks, and then deported back in chains. Not just, sorry, you must leave the country now. There is your flight. No, actually, I assume handcuffed when they said in chains. But then there was the case of the French scientist. Was it Friday? It was Friday or Thursday. Who was just randomly checked at the border. So it was a random, as far as can be told, the US authorities had absolutely no reason to suspect this French scientist of anything untoward. And they just decided to confiscate their phone and laptop and have a look through it. Found some conversations on it, private conversations that were critical of the Trump administration, and used that as a basis for deporting them, saying, no, you can't come into the country, go away. So as a result of this, new hoodie. No, this is actually a fleece. I'm not sure where my hoodie. I had a quick look and I couldn't find one today. I needed to change it, so I just grabbed this instead. It's not my birthday either. And but yeah, so it's a weird situation we've got now, because usually when you do sometimes on the news hear about travel warnings, or there's been an update in terms of travel warnings, and it's usually either a country that's been affected by some, natural disaster. You might have a warning about going to California during wildfire season or something like that, for example. Or if it's for political reasons, it's usually some despotic nation where the locals are acting up a bit, so it's risk of getting pulled into a civil war or mass protests or something. So you tend to get warned away, or a country that's facing a credible prospect of an imminent terror attack. Something like that. You don't expect to hear of Western democracies, including the UK government, warning again. They're not advising you don't travel to America, but they are warning that you are extra careful when traveling to America, specifically because of the authorities. Specifically because you could fall foul of the authorities, which is absolutely mental. And of course, it is going to cause the US tourism industry some problems. It already has done. I had some people, when I put it up in a post today, some people saying that they'd had a trip booked for America. I think it's for next year, so it might have been World Cup related, and that they'd cancelled it. But apparently this is happening on quite a grand scale. There's been, it's not like, a cataclysmic collapse, but there's been a significant collapse in the number of people cancelling American trips, which is believed to be potentially costing them, I think someone suggested altogether about $75 billion this year that it could cost them. And you're thinking to yourself, if it weren't for the fact that America has the World Cup and the Olympics coming up in the next few years, their tourism could well fall flat, because not only is it now, even if you've got everything, you've got your passport, you've got your visa or visa waiver or whatever documentation allows you to go into the United States, the fact that you might still be randomly checked and then kicked out on the basis of something like, I don't know, exercising your freedom of speech in a non-violent manner, and you could still be kicked out, and that would have cost you a fortune. You'd have spent, and if it's like one person out of a family, well, the whole family's not going to carry on with its holiday. They're going to come back as well. So you could be out of pocket to the tune of thousands and thousands of pounds. So why would you risk it? You wouldn't risk it. Plus the fact some people will choose not to go to America just purely for boycotting reasons. You know, you might not be active on social media. They may not be able to find any evidence that you've criticised Trump at any point ever. But you may just choose not to go to America just because, well, you know, why would we? Europeans have experienced this travel to the UK. There was actually one case you may be thinking of. So yeah, if you're thinking what I'm thinking of, yeah, there was a case actually a couple of years ago, post Brexit, where a German part-time band, they all had full-time jobs, but they were in a band, so they used to tour, and they came to the UK, and they thought they had all their paperwork. It's not like they just assumed it was like the old pre-Brexit days where you could, of course, just travel to Britain and perform if you booked a gig. They knew they needed extra paperwork. They got all the extra paperwork. It was all fine and dandy. They got themselves into Britain, and then the authorities looked at this one fella, member of the band, this German band, and said, "Oh, you're a gardener. Yeah, that's my main time job. Yeah, you can't come into the country." I don't know. They obviously thought he might do a spot of moonlighting, a bit of shrubbery building for the Knights of Knee on the side or something. So yeah, but what I would say, even in that case, he wasn't detained for 10 days and then sent back to Germany in chains. So I still think that what's happening in America is, nor was he removed, although it was a very stupid reason to remove someone from the country, or to deny them access, the idea that they would be going around doing random gardening on the side. But nor were they expelled just because they'd said something mean about Boris Johnson or something. But anyway, MZ, they're saying, even I'll just watch Phil's latest video about the travel warnings. Well, that's this video. I did do a short on it earlier, wouldn't I? Wouldn't be returned to the US. My student travel days long over, not as affordable nowadays. Well, no, I mean, I was just saying, like, even if, you know, just the thought. I was joking to Graham Hughes on Friday when that story came about the French scientist, that because he's had a bit of a problem getting into America himself because of some weird visa issue, although he has in the past, of course. And I said to him, "You're definitely not getting into the US anymore. If they're chucking people out who might have said something uncharitable about Donald Trump, then, you know, I mean, you just wouldn't, would you? You wouldn't go." As I say, a lot of people will be motivated to go for the World Cup. You would think a lot will be motivated to go for the Olympics, although maybe with the Olympics, the motivation will be less. So maybe the Olympic attendance won't be as good. Who knows? We'll have to see. But it is, yeah. I mean, I did see someone saying that really they need to find a new venue for the World Cup and the Olympics now. Well, they're not going to, are they? I mean, if we let Russia have the World Cup after they invaded Ukraine, the first, in 2014, they had the World Cup in when was it? Whenever it was. It was a couple of years later or something, 2 or 3 years later. So, Russia had the World Cup whilst it was actively invading a European country. Didn't stop them hosting it. Didn't stop us going. But there it is. CBP in America, who's that? I've always been a bit more aggressive with visitors from the global south, even with appropriate documents. Really does depend on how you answer questions. Well, I mean, you're talking about people who've come from European countries. And it's not even, I know you're imagining the Family Guy skin colour chart. It's not even that. There's been white people turned away as well, bound in chains. You say Starmer's doing Trump tactics on disabled people. No, he's not. It's not, as I've said, I do not know why they've even allowed themselves to go there, but it's not remotely a Trump tactic. I'm definitely not a cat's end. As a trans woman, I guess I'm never visiting the US now. I just worry about the level of hate spreading over here. It already has more than enough. Absolutely. I mean, I did notice, because I had a little look at the UK travel warnings just to have a look. And it does specifically mention single out trans people as you might want to be careful. It does it in very diplomatic language. It sort of says, oh, you know, America, I can't remember the exact wording. Let me find it. But it basically hinted at the fact that the situation and the rules and so on are not the same throughout all the states of America. But it did have a specific warning for trans people. Let me find it. USA travel advice. Bum, bum, bum. I mean, there's all sorts of things for America anyway that do make it difficult. I think where Graham fell foul was visiting other countries. Like it says here, for example, you cannot normally apply for an ESTA visa waiver if you are in the following countries on or after March 2011: Iran, Iraq, Libya, North Korea, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, Yemen. So if you're someone who's like literally traveled to every country in the world, yes, you struggle to get into America. Let me just have a look here. Safety and security. LGBT plus travellers. The US is a very, this is the diplomatic language it uses. The US is a very diverse society, and attitudes towards LGBT plus people differ hugely across the country. You can find more detail on LGBT plus issues in the US on the Human Rights Campaign website. There's a link to it. But yeah, they're basically just saying, yeah, you might not be welcome. And over there saying, oh, this is about the disability thing. I just want to stress that 4 points in one category is hard to achieve. My neurodegenerative condition friend didn't get 4 in one category. Can't work. No, I am fully seized of it. I've said as much in the video. I know people who get PIP. I've talked to people who go through the process. I mean, as far as I am concerned, if you even get a point, you have difficulties. So if you get 12 points across all the categories, you have significant difficulties, which is why I can understand why. And also I'm told by people who've been through the process, you know, there can be a difference in how you'll be scored depending on whether you're having a good day or a bad day, because you do. Everyone has good days and bad days. So I'm fully seized of the notion that there's nothing remotely justifiable about having the 4.1 in, but you know, which is why, again, I'll just reiterate from my point of view, the practical thing to do here is, first of all, for everyone to fill in the consultation, find the consultation. I ought to at some point put a link out, and make sure everyone you know fills it in. But also, this is something supposed to be happening in 2 years' time, right? And Labour have said it's because of cost. They haven't tried to justify it. They haven't come out and said, we don't think people not getting 4 don't need it. Well, they haven't said that I've seen. Certainly Liz Kendall didn't say that when she was announcing it in Parliament, and it didn't say it in the Green Paper either. What they've said is it's about cutting costs. So if by some miracle we manage to wheedle our way around the Trump trade war and somehow get our economy firing on all cylinders in a couple of years, or it's not, but if we get it much better in a couple of years, then we need to be saying to our Labour MPs, we expect you now to stop this. In fact, that's the conversation I'd be having with Labour MPs now. Say to them, I see the only justification is because of cost, so that means that you should also be working hard to make sure that you can reinstate this as soon as costs allow, which they quite frankly should right now, but it is what it is. Anyway, let's have a look. Could the US see a refugee crisis based on the current dictatorship trajectory? Even if only 3% of the population fled, that would be 10 million people. See, 3% of a population fleeing is actually quite large, even when your country is in civil war, which America, of course, could be at some point. Again, I mean, America must surely be at risk of civil war when you have a president who is behaving as he is and actively trying to divide society, and pretty much anyone is allowed as many guns as they like. They boast about the fact they have a huge arsenal in their garage. So the risk of civil war has to be quite high. But even in countries that have full-blown civil war, 3% would still be a lot of people fleeing. It does sometimes happen if it's really war-torn. So I don't think, although it would be vaguely weird, it would be vaguely weird if we had a situation where we were accepting asylum claims from Americans, because that could happen. Jeffrey, they're saying again, we're probably going to be cutting across both topics here. This PIP nonsense goes through. Labour have lost me forever. Sadly, though, I've emailed my Labour MP. She's useless. She'd vote for the KGB if Labour brought it in. Well, at least they're not planning on doing that. I understand, particularly if you're personally affected. But again, I'm afraid from my point of view, the situation is this. If Labour don't get in, the Tories do get in. The Tories had already planned more severe cuts than this. And they weren't boosting minimum wage. They weren't boosting public sector pay. They weren't boosting social and affordable housing. They weren't going to be cutting NHS waiting lists. They weren't going to be boosting workers' rights. It's unfortunately one of those things in politics. I mean, I'm not even going to say, you can't expect things to be perfect, because this is something, I've said myself, Labour should not have gone anywhere near. It is not a Labour thing to do under any circumstances. However, the reality is that even these people affected are going to be better off under Labour than they would under the Conservatives. And unfortunately, politics is not a choice. It's not a choice of what you want. It's a choice of what is best for you. Now, if people want to vote against what I would say is against their own interest, that is up to them. But that is unfortunately the reality of it. And it is more so the case in a first-past-the-post system as well. Because in a first-past-the-post system, the reality is that people with disabilities are not a strong voting bloc. The people who are a strong voting bloc, an important voting bloc, actually resents the spending of benefits. So that's why, there's never going to be an electoral solution to this. The challenge has to be to work on Labour MPs and say, you're saying this is because of the finances. So you need to be pushing them now. Are you therefore saying that when the finances improve, that we should be able to stop this? Because this is something that's supposed to be happening in 2 years' time. If you cannot justify it based on anything other than cost, and Liz Kendall has not, and neither has Rachel Reeves or Keir Starmer, as far as I'm aware, then it has to be scrapped as soon as the figures allow for it. Chris C there saying, have you seen The Guardian today? Reeves is going to tell backbenchers that cuts are necessary if they want to avoid a trust mini-budget disaster with the markets. So, yes, I have. It is true to say that, first of all, Reeves cannot borrow anymore. She already borrowed much more than investors banked on. Secondly, she does have to make the figures add up. Otherwise, you do end up in Liz Truss territory. That is a fact. You have to be careful about what you mean by cuts, though. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is, if what Reeves announces, so the next week is like the final budget, that's the one that then goes into place. If it has more spending than last year's budget, then it's not cuts. It's cuts compared with what they intended to do, but it's not an actual cut. It'll be described as a cut if she scales back any spending plans that she announced in October, which obviously she said she's going to. The question is it a cut? If it's less spend, and I mean in real terms as well, we're not going to play about with inflation. If it's a real terms cut on last year's budget, then it is cuts and it is austerity. If it is a real terms boost on overall spending in real terms, then it's not cuts. It's like downgraded spending plans. There is a difference. But anyway. Best way to lift people out of poverty and reduce the welfare bill is to force employers to pay a proper wage. Stop expecting the state to subsidise their wages. So, yes, and that's what we need to move towards. You cannot do it overnight, though. So Labour have already done that by not only raising minimum wage above the level of inflation and indicating that they're going to carry on doing that. Remember, the minimum wage, which was introduced by the last Labour government, was increased a lot over their term. Had they remained in power, I know no party can remain in power for that long, but had they, or if they hadn't been replaced by the Tories, at least, if we lived in a sort of PR situation where it's possible to like clip the wings of the biggest party in government but not massively change the nature of the government, if you could basically keep the Tories out, then the minimum wage would now be considerably higher. Because you're absolutely right, it's a farce that you have benefits for people in work who don't have any special needs. They're just people whose wages are too low. And it is ridiculous. But you cannot just change it overnight, because you will just send loads of businesses out of business and you will just create massive unemployment. Then you'll have people on benefits instead of wages. So you cannot actually just change it overnight. You can change it slowly over time, which one is what needs to happen. The problem, of course, is that we will do that. That is what will happen. In 10 years' time, it'll be looking much better. You will. And this is my problem with the way our budgets are measured. This arguably is a downside to the OBR. Remember, the OBR didn't used to exist. If the OBR didn't exist, Rachel Reeves may not have to do this. It's because they have to be able to say that, yes, your figures add up. Now, if the OBR didn't exist, and remember, it didn't exist during the last Labour government. So the Labour government would be able to say, we're going to be making these savings over 4 years, and this is how we'll do it. And they would be the judge and jury on the situation. They would proclaim it. Now, sure, investors could decide that they don't buy it, but Reeves does talk to investor groups to make sure that she's not steering too far away from what they'll accept. But because the OBR now have to work out, I mean, it's a mad situation. They have to work on a forecast that says in 5 years' time, this is what your GDP is going to be, and this is what your borrowing is going to be. And which is a madness. No one can predict that over a 5-year period, particularly during turbulent times. But that's what they have to do. And that's why we're in this situation. Say we don't have any choice now. It's blue Tories or red Tories. Absolute nonsense. I keep telling you, this is a Labour government. Yes, it's done a thing that a Labour government should not do. But it has also boosted workers' rights. The Tories don't do that. It has also boosted it's going to be boosting the supply. It's already put the money in for affordable and social housing. Tory governments don't do that. It's boosted minimum wage with the aim of getting it up to the point where it's a proper living wage. Tory governments don't do that. It's massively boosted public sector pay in order to try and recruit people back into the public sector. Tory governments don't do that. It has brought NHS waiting lists down over winter. I cannot tell you how that should not happen. Should not happen. Even given that Labour were going to straight away make improvements, I did not think it would have been possible to get waiting lists down over winter when demand ramps up. We haven't suddenly stopped people getting ill over winter. So demand has still ramped up. It's just that we have managed to increase supply. So all of these things are not things the Tories do. It's a very, very lazy argument to describe them as just Tories with another name. It's absolute bullshit. They've done a thing they've maybe done a few things you don't like, but they've done a thing they shouldn't have done. And I hope when it comes to it, end up not doing, although they'll still cause a lot of grief in the interim, even if they don't go ahead with it. But that does not make them Tories, the fact that they do one thing wrong, right? And honestly, if you have to come out with these arguments they're just red Tories, when against the background of the largest nationalisation programme in my lifetime, the largest programme of affordable and social house building in my lifetime, the biggest boost to workers' rights in my lifetime, and the list goes on. If you're basically, after all that, going to call them red Tories, you're saying you don't have an argument. You're saying you don't have an argument because you're just throwing around ad hominems, which you know, it shows you're not actually convinced by your own argument. What you need to do is to say, this is all great, brilliant. This is really bad, and this is why it's bad, and this is what I think we need to do to fix it. Now, my idea, abolish the OBR. Liz Truss tried to do that, didn't go very well. She didn't obviously abolish the OBR, she just did without them. So I think we are stuck with the OBR. Gary said, it doesn't affect Phil and most people here. No, it doesn't affect me, but that doesn't change the argument. Again, I never use that argument, ever. You know, if I'm arguing someone on politics, I never say, well, it's all right for you, because it's all right for everyone, almost everyone. But I don't do that, right? You need to argue a point on the merits of a case. You need to, otherwise, because again, it's like, you know, when Keir Starmer said a few years ago at the Labour Party conference after some heckling, do we want to be a party of protest or a party of power? I've said the same thing applies to campaigns, even whether it's a one-person campaign or a large campaign, whatever it is, it's the same process. You either work to make change or you just protest. If you just want to protest, then that's fine. Your arguments don't need to be sensible. But if you want to actually change something, you have to go, right, well, this is where we are. This is where we want to be. How do we get from A to B? So where we are is Labour are talking about massively disenfranchising hundreds of thousands of people with capability needs. And it's going to really badly affect them. That's where we are. Where do we want to be? We want to be the point where Labour do not go ahead with this. And we've got 2 years to do it. So how do you get from A to B? You don't get from A to B by just going, oh, they're red Tories, we'll vote the real Tories in next time. Because that actually just makes it worse. And that's how you can tell whether you actually want change or whether you just want to protest. You need to put down where we are, where you want to be, and you plot the way we get from A to B. If you can't do that, you just want to protest. Anyway, catch up with a couple of little messages that came in. Alec Barrett there saying, going to email MP to ask for DST to be increased to 20%. You can try. I don't think anything's going to be increased more than it's already been announced at the moment. And nor will it until the finances are looking better. What I would want to do of MPs at the moment, Labour MPs, if you have a Labour MP, is to really pin down. You can't justify this in terms of, you are not able to tell me that people scoring 12 points but not 4 in any one category. Because some of these people, remember, are scoring 3 points in multiple categories. There are some people who get way over the 12 points. They just don't happen to get 4 in any one category. But, you know, they still have... Like, if you imagine... this is how I would put it to a Labour MP, if they're not aware of it. So imagine a situation where you've got someone who, on their own, might take 3 hours to get ready for work or something, assuming they can even get into work. But with help, with this money, they would be able to have some help and be ready in an hour, right? Ask them how they're supposed to get a job if they're expected to take 3 hours to get ready for something that could take an hour with help, if they can't get that help. You know, and there are more serious problems than just extra time needed. But just put it in those terms and say, if the only argument is it's money, get them to confirm that first of all they're going to resist this anyway, and secondly, if the figures no longer justify making these cuts, in other words, because Labour's plans, remember, are for more people to leave welfare the kind way, by getting medical treatment for something and getting jobs, right? A PIP doesn't affect either of those, but, you know, just in general, they're talking about reducing the welfare bill by tackling corruption, by tackling fraud, by getting people the medical attention they need, medical treatment, and by getting more people into work. Well, if Labour achieve all these things, they shouldn't need to cut PIP, should they? Pin down your MP for that. Richard there saying, my MP is Jeremy Hunt, so won't be writing to him, or this would get an answer if we'd cut even more. Well, he did cut even more. He was the Chancellor who did that. Because remember, put it this way, the Jeremy Hunt had already earmarked benefits cuts across the board for last autumn. So it was going to happen last autumn. Now, consider this. Although the Tories will try and say that the reason why the economy or the cost of borrowing has gone up extra in those intervening months is because, it's all because of Rachel Reeves's rubbish budget. No, it's not. It's because of Donald Trump's nonsense, as well as a few other things potentially. But, so that basically means if the Conservatives had still been in power, they would have made those cuts last autumn and they would still be facing higher borrowing costs now. So they would be cutting further in the budget that they'd have already announced it. I mean, the reason why Labour are leaving this budget announcement late, like next week is the latest they can leave it because the bloody tax year starts the week after. The reason they've left it as late as possible is in the hopes for some better... They've been negotiating with the OBR, basically, to make the figures out to be kinder. The Tories want, they'd have already announced it, and it'd have been more cuts. Prior to this, new figures reveal Brexit costs UK businesses 37 billion. Headline from The Independent. Is that a year? It costs more than that, I'm sure. It depends what sort of cost they're talking about. It costs the Treasury more than that. I think the actual cost to our overall GDP, which is not quite the same thing, is over 100 billion, bit over 100 billion. So I suppose it depends on what you mean by cost business. I haven't seen that headline yet though. But anyway. David, they say, I remember the Corbyn idiots telling ordinary Labour voters to get out and vote Tory at the previous election to guess what they did. Very good. I presume people will be jumping on PR when the opportunity arises. See, I have a real problem now with the way MPs think about, or some MPs think about PR. On the one hand, they think, oh no, because it'll help Nigel Farage. He wants PR. And yeah, he does want PR. But he doesn't want PR as a route to government. PR, and this is what I wish I could explain to some of these MPs, PR would stop him forming a government. Nigel Farage, I don't think he can, because I think he personally is too off-putting. But in theory, a populist like Nigel Farage can end up as Prime Minister under our current system. He cannot end up as Prime Minister under PR. Won't happen. People in this country will not vote for like a complete right-wing government. They may vote in such a way that you end up with a coalition of the Conservatives and some others or something like that. You will not end up with a government led by Nigel Farage. PR cannot possibly lead to Nigel Farage being Prime Minister. First past the post can. But the problem is they think to themselves, oh, with PR he'd have had loads more MPs. It's like, yeah, he would. He'd absolutely have loads more MPs. Definitely. Not enough to form a government. Not even with the Tories. And remember, because he's taking votes mostly off the Tories, it's not even like, oh, but the Tories plus Reform UK together. No, because they're not getting anywhere near 50%. And remember, even if they did get 51% of the vote, in a first past the post system, that means you've got all the power, right? As long as you get them all to agree. In PR, it would be too unstable, because it would be, in a first past the post system, you're forced into it. Right? If you've got a coalition that accounts for 51% of the seats, then there is no other game in town realistically. Whereas in a PR system, there is, because you could work on like a three-party coalition that beats it or something. Richard, that's a random question. How's your ad revenue in now getting ads nearly all day the last few weeks? The ads are the same as they always were. They are changing something about them in, I think it might be May. I think the system, they do occasionally change the system. So there's a new system going to be where it'll try and work out natural breakpoints. So apparently the tech's going to be better, but my ad revenue is well down, mate. Ever since, in fact, the ad rate started to go down after the Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. My ad rate reflects the general state of the economy. So, because it's based on advertisements, if consumer confidence is low, or companies are easily selling their products, and there's not a lot of slack, then they don't spend as much on advertising. So I get a tiny amount of advertising revenue compared to what I used to get. Still plenty. I'm not complaining. But if you think you're seeing more adverts, absolutely, I guarantee nothing has changed about the rate of adverts. Because I am up to date with all the changes on YouTube. The only change they're making to ads, and they haven't made it yet, is in a couple of months. And as I say, it's for finding better places in the video, more natural places to put them. What's in it for Trump to join the Commonwealth? That was my question. Much easier to destroy something from inside. See, first of all, I don't know that Trump has any beef with the Commonwealth. Apart from anything else, it doesn't include a single EU member now that we've left. So, his beef, and it doesn't include China. So, he doesn't like the EU. He doesn't like China, presumably because they are the only two parts of the world that can challenge the United States economically. He might have other reasons for it, but that's all I can think of. No EU member and China are not members of the Commonwealth. So I don't see that's in it for that. Also, I don't really see how him being on the inside does that anyway, because the Commonwealth, it's not like, there's a treaty, of course, but it's not, like, what can he do? It's really a talking shop. It's a way of getting agreements on. Effectively, it's supposed to be about, these days, ways to boost some of the poorer countries. But there it is. So I honestly don't know. I do not know why Trump. I'm hoping, because Charles is suggesting he just wants to, like he is sometimes. He turns on the charm ahead of a meeting. Maybe he just feels it would be rude to say, "Oh no, we don't want to do that." But I don't know why he would want. But the fact that he shared the tweet of the Sun article, I just thought was weird. But anyway. Jeffrey there saying the Netherlands supports your argument. The far right guy wants to be PM, and the other coalition partner said on your back. It is. At the same time, I would not adopt the Dutch system. They have too many parties. Again, the way you deal with that, you just have 5% cut off. You need in the way we do it in this country that makes the most sense, I would argue, is you have to get 5% of the vote across all of the constituencies you contest, or regions you contest, however it's sort of broken down. So in everywhere you stand, if you add it all up, you need 5% of the vote. Because obviously you can't just say for the whole country, because then you disenfranchise, Welsh and Scottish or even Yorkshire parties, things like that. So just have it so that you need to get 5% of the votes in the areas you're standing candidates in. And then and the benefit of that as well is the problem with having lots of parties is it means lots of niche parties because when you have there are not lots and lots of political positions to have. So when you have like dozens of different political parties, it's because they don't want to compromise with another. That's all there is to it. Like you sort of need a smattering. You need like a couple of left-wing liberal parties, maybe a left-wing authoritarian party, couple of right-wing authoritarian parties, a right-wing liberal party, somewhere around in the centre. You don't really need many parties. So if you have lots of them, it's because they're people who will not compromise even a little bit. And that's a problem when you need a coalition government, because you have to compromise in a coalition for that government to be stable. So you enhance the stability. You enhance the stability of that government by having as few parties as possible, and having as few parties as possible means that you're more likely to have those parties led by people who are good at compromising, because that's how you build up into a large party. Viv there saying he wants to be king of the UK as well as the US, I reckon, maybe. I wonder how long it'll be before he actually forges a crown for himself. Or gets someone else to. I wonder what it would look like. Always been in favour of the German system, done properly. 50% constituency, 50% proportional. Not the weird 72... what's that? 72.5 versus 36 and a third proportional like in Scotland. Well, my big issue... So we may... If you were building it up from scratch, I would say absolutely. We won't be building it up from scratch, however. We'll be building it up from the idea of constituency MPs, and people will want constituency MPs. My major beef with the Scottish system is the fact that the top-up members, which is actually the majority of them, so most MSPs are actually not voted via PR at all. They're constituency MSPs voted by first past the post. So what I would do is say, so you've got a certain number of regional MPs. I would like it to be as close to half as possible, but I strongly suspect it wouldn't actually be half. But for the constituency MPs, I want them chosen via transferable vote system. So, you know, vote for two things. The party you want for the regional, the party you want to give your regional vote to, or it could be an independent, doesn't matter, but who you want to give your regional vote to, and then who you want to vote for your constituency MP with a first choice, second choice, third choice. That's what I would be thinking in terms of. At the same time, I would accept anything that makes Parliament close to proportional. You won't get it perfect anyway. But I would vote for anything that makes it close to proportional. I just don't like the idea of only having constituency MPs, even if you had a transferable vote system for them. It would be better, but still not good enough. Get rid of the House of Lords. Well, that is the plan. Unfortunately, there's quite a lot of resistance within Labour. It's like Keir Starmer and Gordon Brown seem to be the only ones really keen on it, which is weird. I find that weird that you've got lots of people in Labour, like old Labour even, who maybe because they want to wangle a seat in the House of Lords themselves at one point. I don't know why people do. I honestly don't know what the appeal is for people to like retire and go to the House of Lords, because you don't like get paid anything unless you turn up. So you have to live in London to make any benefit out of it. Could Charles bestow some sort of title on Trump if he were a Commonwealth leader? He could bestow a title on him anyway, couldn't he? Didn't we give... there's like... You know, you can... Because if he was in the Commonwealth, in theory, he could have a knighthood. So, yeah, I think that's maybe what you're thinking of. But we can confirm honoraries anyway. Didn't Steven Spielberg get a sort of honorary knighthood, a sort of a version of a knighthood for people who aren't in the Commonwealth anyway? Pretty sure we gave Steven Spielberg an honour that was equivalent to a knighthood. So we could give him a medal. If all he wants is a medal, we could give him that now. Gareth there saying, Phil, I still say MMP like New Zealand is the way forward. There may well be systems that are really good and would suit the UK in theory very well. But I'm just going to tell you, people will not want the system changing too much. Even if people are in favour of PR, they will expect a constituency MP. I'm not sure. I mean, the easiest way to do it would be effectively to do what Wales are doing. Double up constituencies. So you have double the constituency, but then you have your regional MPs as well. I'm not even sure if people would accept that. Because if we did do that, then that way you can get half constituency MPs and half regional MPs without even having to increase the number of MPs in the Commons. Because the other thing I would say is, like, we can absolutely have more MPs. We can have 1,000 MPs, no problem at all. You know, you always get people going, oh, but in America, it's a much bigger country. They only have like a few hundred. and Congress. It's like, yeah, but then they've got the state legislatures as well, which are not like county councils. They are much more powerful. So America's got shitloads of legislators, even per capita compared to us. So we could easily go up to 1,000, but not in the Palace of Westminster. It's too small. So we would actually have to build a new Parliament building, and there's too many people would be against that as well. So you have to be realistic. People are not prepared to build a new Parliament, which is mental for me. It'd be cheaper to build a new Parliament than to repair the current one. And people are not going to give up constituency MPs. So you have to work with what people will accept. I think abolishing the laws would have been a vote winner with the not political engaged. Oh no, don't. I mean, it's in the manifesto. Abolishing the House of Lords is in the manifesto. So clearly, it's not been considered a vote loser. It's just that it won't be abolished this Parliament. The problem is, there is a lot of bafflingly political objections within Labour, within the Labour Party, from people you wouldn't normally expect it of. It's like it's pretty much Starmer's the only one who wants to do it, I think. There must be a few others, of course, as well. But, you know, there just seems to be a massive amount. Because he wanted to abolish it straight away. He wanted it gone the first Parliament. You know, the only reason it's not because he's gone soft on it. It's because other people kept coming up. Oh, it'll take ages. Oh, you've got more important things to do, Keir. Oh, you know, just kick it into the long grass. Kick it. I tell you what, make them retire when they're 80 or something. Prior to that, saying I'd write in a rule of set elections every 5 years in May to coincide with locals, with new government to start during the first following month, giving them time to negotiate coalition plans. The thing is, we tried that, didn't we? We tried actually setting the election in stone. And then we had 2 elections that didn't win. The thing is, like, Parliament can always vote to have an early election if it wants. So you'll never take that away. You'll never be able to take it away. I mean, you can try and do something like, oh, it needs 60% or so. You can try for a supermajority. You could change, you know, you could create a constitutional change like that. But it's like America. Like, America has its elections on a set day, very predictable. Sure. If enough members of Congress and the president wanted a different date, they could absolutely change it. It's just that in this country we're in it's normal to change it. It's not a big thing. Like in America, if there was a move to change the election date, whether bring it forward or put it back, that would be a big thing. That would be a big thing. It attracts a lot of attention, a lot of questions. Whereas in this country, because it's normal, it's very rare for an election for a parliament to last the full length to the day. So it's so rare that happens that we just accept it's just normal. So MPs think nothing of voting for an earlier election. In the US, the Senate has 200. Now I think it has 100. I can't remember how many representatives there are. I'm almost certain there are 100 senators. Someone can check for me. Pretty sure it's 100. But I think there's several hundred in the House of Representatives. I can't remember how many. Oh, there we go, Alec. Thank you. It's 100 with 430 representatives. Thank you very much. So there you go. You've got 535 in Congress altogether, plus 1 president and 1 vice president. Although the vice president, yeah, 1 vice president, 1 president as well. That is it. That's their legislators. They say if I was going to make an AMS, I would have 15 to 18 MPs elected per region. Oh, I don't think I'd go for that many, with 8 elected via list. See, I mean, no, I don't think we could get away with that. But again, we're going to need a system that, to most people, because new is scary. People, even when like you use the word reform a lot, politicians use the word reform a lot, but the last thing most voters want is major change. It's like they want reform, but not major change. It's like, well, how does that work? So what they really want is for you to, what they mean is that the public want you to make a big positive difference without making things unfamiliar, because unfamiliarity is scary. I'm amazed we ever were able to transition to decimalisation with currency. I am astounded that we ever had the nerve to do that. But there it is. It would be different, I suppose. We could, of course, absolutely massively change the system if we had widespread political approval. But remember, the Conservatives will argue against any change to the electoral system at all. They'll absolutely argue to the cows come home. So you won't get any political settlement on it. So if Labour change it, and I do hope they do, it will have to be, because of course there'll have to be some sort of referendum. Labour have already said they're not putting it in a manifesto. If we change the system, it'll be via a public consultation, which ultimately means a referendum at some point. Which means if you're going to win that referendum, and remember the big money will be against it, although ironically interesting, so Reform UK, if we were to do it early, they'd be up for it. But the big money will be mostly against it. It will be, you need to make it as familiar as possible, as friendly as possible. Viv, they're saying if we voted for doctors as MPs, they could do medical and political surgery at the same time. Yes, very good. Surprise Starmer's not forced a minimum number of hours in a constituency because Farage would fall instantly on that requirement. Well, the problem is so might he. The issue, of course, is an MP has two antagonistic roles. So they are there to serve the needs of the constituents, for which they should hold surgeries. Ideally, they certainly need to make sure that they are able to listen to people's concerns and raise, attend meetings locally, work with local councillors, all that sort of business. But then they have another role of national legislators. So if you're a minister in government, you have for most ministers, it's like a 9-to-5, 5-day-a-week job in London, in Westminster, which means you don't really have a lot of time. Even during the recesses, you're still in your ministry. So you don't really have much time for the constituency, if any. And if you're a senior member of the government, it's not even 5 days a week, it's like 7 days a week. So, you've got... I mean, Keir Starmer will have a constituency office with staff who will attend to their constituents' needs, but he won't be able to do much because he's in Downing Street. So we can't really do that. I mean, the way to deal with Farage is just to really clamp down on, just stop MPs being able to earn anything on the side. That'll stop him straight away. Stop him in his tracks. I've said before, with MPs, have it so that they are not allowed to accept anything, or anything they accept of monetary value, they have to pay tax on, and they have to pay a tax at a rate of 100%. Do that. Anything they receive in either gifts or money gets taxed at 100% rate. So if Nigel Farage, for example, gets 20 grand for doing a talk in America, then he has to pay 20 grand in taxes. If he receives 50 grand worth of election help from a Republican, then he has to cough up 50 grand for the Treasury. That'll deal with him. Gareth, they're saying 90% of MP casework is handled by their office staff. Yeah, because MPs, during a lot of the time, are in Parliament voting on things. But if you're a minister, you're not just voting on things, you're also working on the legislation itself. So that's a full-time job. But backbench MPs are still in their constituency a lot of the time. They're the busiest days for Parliament. I mean, it can vary, but they're usually Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Sometimes you might have a big vote on a Monday or a big debate on a Monday. Rarely will you have it on Friday. So most people are back in their constituencies on Friday, as well as, of course, during the recess. The recess is not just supposed to be a holiday. And that's what backbench MPs should be doing. But when they're in Westminster, they all should have staff to deal with that. Alec, they're going to say, my idea would have 7 to 10 constituency MPs, then 8 list MPs in each region. See, now it sounds like you would be creating arbitrary regions as well. I think the regions would have to run along county lines as well. You may have to combine a few small counties together, but basically they need to work within current county lines as well. Again, you can't just try and design a system from the ground up as if you were making the country anew, because people won't accept it. People will want the benefits of the change, but they will not want it to become too unfamiliar. They essentially, like when people complain about governments tinkering, it's like, well, that's what people want. Do we know any more about decentralisation of power at Westminster? Is community MP meetings more power to council, etc.? Well, that's ongoing at the moment. Yes, there's legislation going through Parliament to give more power. It will mostly benefit... See, there are going to be winners and losers. It will mostly benefit areas that are covered by a metro mayor because they will suddenly get lots of extra powers. It will be more of a problem for areas that are between those, like... So, because there are going to be some... There are some places... I lived in a place recently. There are some places that are covered by multiple types of council. So the idea is to get rid of all this, what's considered the superfluous ones. Now, there will be some people who don't like that. But I mean, my attitude to that would be, and Labour are not talking about this, but I really wish they would. You know, I've said before, what we should have is just county councils, none of the other pissy little things, county councils, and the councillors should be paid a proper wage, 50 grand a year. Paid a proper wage so that they can be full-time councillors. Not as, you know, you don't get paid as much as an MP, but nonetheless have a professional system of local government. Because mayors, metro mayors are paid properly. I mean, they're paid more than MPs. They're paid more like ministers, I think. So that's what we should do. Abolish or merge counties. Yeah, you see, you get into a lot of trouble with that. Do you know, on August the 1st, we have a bit of a thing in this country. It's called Yorkshire Day. Now, the reason we have Yorkshire Day, it's not, I mean, these days it's just a celebration of things Yorkshire, and you have some parking in Wensleydale, or I do anyway. And you have various events and stuff like that. Bit of a celebration these days of God's county. But it started in the 70s. I was too young to remember. I don't think I was even born. But it started in the 70s as a protest. Because at the time, Yorkshire was like, Yorkshire's in 4 bits. North Yorkshire, West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire. And I think it keeps changing its name. I think at the moment it is still the East Riding of Yorkshire. Hull and all that business. But at the time, in the 70s, Yorkshire was in a different 4 bits. So you had the West Riding, you had the East Riding, you had the North Riding, and you had the city of York. So those were the 4 bits of Yorkshire. And there might have been perfectly good administrative reasons to do it. I don't know. I was just a little babby. In fact, I may not have even been born. I can't remember exactly when it was. I think I hadn't been born. So then they changed it into say, right, no, York can go into North Yorkshire. So we'll have North Yorkshire, we'll have West Yorkshire, we'll have South. They created South Yorkshire out of nothing, which is where I'm from. And then you can still have like the East Riding of Yorkshire, which was always a bit of a mess. So it sparked a bloody protest. People didn't like it, even though it may well have made administrative sense to do it. So people get very attached to their counties. Apart from anything else, can you imagine the chaos it would cause the cricket season? You can't be messing about with Test cricket in this country. I mean, you might as well tell people they're not allowed to drink tea anymore. So no, you will not be able to monkey about with county lines easily. Work with what you've got. There's really no point in trying to do an etch-a-sketch version of reworking the administration of Britain. Work with what you've got. We've got counties. If there are 2 small counties, put them together for the purposes of, PR regions, but work with what you've got. Anyway, we're run out of time. Let's see if there's the last few here. Gareth is saying Lancashire Day, November 27th. I don't believe that. I don't think Lancashire have a day. You say proper God's County. It's not. Lancashire can't even work out where it is. Do you know, I went to university at Manchester, right? And there was me thinking I was going to the old enemy, right? Lancashire, right? But Manchester's not in Lancashire. And I only discovered this in my third year when I went on something, it's a charity walk called the Bogle Stroll, like a 24-hour walk. And I came across this sign saying, "Welcome to Lancashire." And I thought I was in Lancashire. What's going on? And then I found that Greater Manchester is a county in itself now. So Lancashire actually also has obviously in the past had its county lines changed. So it's always now really weird to me. Of course, Yorkshire's better. Yorkshire is the seat of civilization. Did you know that? Western civilization. I'm not suggesting there's no civilization anywhere else. Western civilization began in Yorkshire, and that's not me Alf Garnetting, that's a fact. See, if you think back, so what really kick-started Western civilization? Ultimately, the Roman emperor, Constantine, the first Christian emperor, created the Holy Roman Empire, which sort of, even when the empire collapsed, that sort of idea still permeated throughout the rest of Europe. And then when we nicked various other countries around the world, spread there as well. And Constantine, when he became emperor, was in York. He was visiting York at the time. There's a plaque outside York, the York Minster. So Yorkshire is therefore the heart of Western civilization. But the point is also that Lancashire now has to, at least the Yorkshire cricket ground is in Yorkshire, it's in Headingley. Whereas the Lancashire county cricket ground in Old Trafford is not in Lancashire. It's in a different bloody county. It's in Greater Manchester. So Lancashire don't even have their own cricket ground. But anyway, I'm not getting into a War of the Roses fight. We've run out of time. And there, MZ saying, and Phil ain't a drinker of tea, any Yorkshire others. No, I don't. I'm afraid I don't like tea. Unfortunate. So I don't have Yorkshire tea on Yorkshire Day because I don't like it. I do have parking. I do sometimes have treacle toffee, but I tend to watch out for treacle toffee these days. And so I'll get parking and I'll get some Wensleydale on Yorkshire Day. But there it is. Actually, S-Factor just said Lancashire used to include Liverpool as well. I didn't actually know that. But there we go. The Yorkshire where the words "the" and "nothing" are forbidden, yes. We haven't got time to pronounce all words in Yorkshire. We've got a lot to say in a very short time to say it. But there we go. Thanks for coming on, everyone. Have a great evening. And until next time, I'll see you later.